This session is about observation skills. That ability to pay exquisite attention to someone else so that you can notice the changes in them easily and quickly. Our objectives in this session are that at the end of it you'll be able to identify the importance of observation skills when you're coaching. You'll be able to improve your own observation skills through the exercises and practice in this session. And you'll be able to identify how someone is processing the information they have just been given through watching what their eyes are doing. So why are observation skills important to a coach? Well, as a coach, you want to glean as much information about the person you're coaching as you possibly can. And paying exquisite attention allows you to notice even very small changes in their physiology and body language, which we'll be covering in this session, and in their voice, which we'll be covering in a later session. What that skill does is to help you pick up how your client is responding to what you're doing, how they are responding to the questions that you ask, and the actions that you're taking. And that's essential because the sooner you pick up these cues, the sooner you can change what you're doing if it isn't having the impact that you want. So it allows you to adjust your approach to fit in with the client and their way of thinking. And it means that you'll get changes and results from your coaching much more quickly. It also means that if the client is having a problem, you can start to pick out what it is about their current approach or their current way of thinking that is creating the problem for them. This means that you'll have a lot more to work from and more options open to you as to how you can coach and help the person bring about the change. The more you notice, the more flexible and effective you can be as a coach. This session is a series of exercises so that you can find out exactly where you currently are with your ability to notice and remember changes, and to give you opportunities to hone and practice these skills. These are the very basic coaching skills and underpin everything else that we do throughout these modules. This first exercise is for you to discover the sorts of things you're noticing already about someone when you're communicating with them, and to help you start to increase the amount that you notice. So, in this exercise, find someone to work with, and in the pair, you'll have an observer and a conversation leader. And you want to find a topic that the conversation leader is very interested in, and the observer and the conversation leader will have a chat about that particular topic. So it could be a sport that they're interested in, it could be about where they've been on holiday, it could be about their work, anything like that. The job of the observer is to find out as much as they can about the topic, asking questions where they need to, and also, and very importantly, is to notice as much as the observer can about the conversation leader. So, the instruction for the observer are as follows. Firstly, to be twice as observant as you normally are, and twice as aware as you normally are. To use all your senses to take in everything you possibly can about the person. And you'll want to listen very carefully to the words they use and listen to the voice. So notice when the tone, volume and intonation of the voice, when it changes. Are there some kind of things that they're talking about when they talk very much more loudly than others? Are there some kind of things that they're talking about when they talk more quickly? Or maybe they start to talk very much more slowly, and maybe even with pauses between the words. And when is it, and what is it that they're talking about when those changes happen? Listen very carefully to the words that they use, and notice, are there particular words that they use often? Are there particular ways that they phrase things, or key phrases that they seem to like using? If you do notice these, try using some of these back to them when you're asking questions. And then what about their body language? Notice, do they have particular mannerisms that they use when they're talking? And are there occasions when they use more gestures than others? And where are those gestures? Are they high up or low down or in the middle? What sort of things are they talking about when they use more gestures? Also, you might want to pay great attention to their posture and how they're sitting. And do they move that at times? What are they talking about when they move them? Also, notice their facial expressions and how do those change? And watch their eyes and notice what happens when you ask them a question. And when you're asking the questions, use some of the language that the person uses back to them and notice what happens. You will also want to pay attention to the content of what they're saying, but most importantly, be aware of all the person. And in order to do this, I suggest that you don't take notes, because whilst you're writing notes, you'll be missing a lot of what is happening with the person. So do this for about 15 minutes. And when you've done that, then you can jot down some notes about the things that you've observed and discuss it with the person if you want to. And then swap over so that you have the experience of someone observing you. It's often interesting to find out what someone else observes about you. So having done that exercise, what did you notice? How easy did you find it to keep paying attention? And what could you do differently to improve your observational skills? What were you surprised to notice? How much did you make assumptions about the changes in the person and what they meant? Did you just assume, for instance, that if they crossed their arms that they were putting up a barrier? Or how much were you able to make observations on what they were saying and noticing how they changed with what they were saying? Now, here's the next exercise. This is one designed to help you notice smaller and smaller changes in someone so that you can hone your observational skills even more. Once again, find a partner to work with, and in this exercise, one person will be the observer and the other person will be the mover. The mover will stand in a particular way, whatever way they like, and the observer will pay great attention to the way that the person is standing still, and then close their eyes. And whilst the observer has their eyes closed, then the mover will move something about themselves, perhaps the position of a finger, or the tilt of a head, or moving the body sideways a little, anything like that. And when they've done that, they ask the observer to open their eyes, and the observer will say what the change has been. And you want to repeat this process about 8 times, and each time the mover wants to make the movement smaller and smaller to give the observer really great practice. And then you can swap over and do it the other way around. So, having done that exercise, what did you learn? How easy did you find it noticing the differences? And what made it easier for you to notice the differences? This exercise helps you when you're coaching because you start to notice very small changes that are happening with your client so that you can ask them about it or use the information later to help the client bring about changes. One of the things that Bandler and Grinder highlighted was about how people use their eyes and about eye accessing cues. They found that when someone is processing information or searching for information that's not currently in their conscious minds, their eyes will move, and where their eyes go to shows you which representational system someone is searching in. If you remember when we looked at the communication model, when we made internal representations, we tended to do that in one of the representational systems, either as a picture or a sound, or as tastes or smells or feelings or self-talk. So the eyes show us which one of those they're using at the time. Are they looking for pictures or images of something? Are they hearing sounds? Are they searching for feelings? Or are they searching for things that they say to themselves? Not only that, but you can tell by the eyes whether they are searching for things that they've already seen and heard, or are they constructing the images and sounds in their heads? So I'm wondering, would you be interested in being able to tell how someone is processing the question you've just asked them? Because when you know how to do this, you can use the information to help the person process in the most helpful way for the outcome that they want to achieve. And you can change the language that you use to fit in better with how they're processing, so that you can create much deeper rapport. And you can use it in techniques to bring about change as well. So this is a very useful skill to learn. And how much value would being able to do all of that be for you as a coach? So how does this work? Well, imagine that this is a person that you're looking at. And when they are looking up to visual remember, that's when they're remembering a picture of something they have already seen. For example, if you were to ask them what's the colour of their favourite coat, their eyes will normally go to visual remember as they search for a picture of their favourite coat to find out the answer. So when our eyes go to visual remember, that's when we're remembering things that we have already seen. On the opposite side is visual construct. And that's when people are constructing a picture of something that they've not yet seen. So, for example, if you were to ask someone what an elephant looked like if it had pink stripes and purple spots all over it, then you would find most probably that their eyes would go to visual construct to put the stripes and the purple spots on the elephants, because I very much doubt that they've seen an elephant like that before. In coaching, you would expect to see someone's eyes go to visual remembered when they were telling you about something that had happened in the past. And you would want their eyes to go to visual construct when they were telling you about their goal or outcome, or how they wanted to be different. If at that point they stayed in visual remembered, it may mean that they're just imagining doing things in the same old ways. So you may want to do some more work with them to get them to construct a picture that they haven't tried before. When the eyes go in the direction of auditory remembered, this is about sound and its quality. This is when you're remembering sounds that you've already heard. So, for example, if someone asked you about your favourite piece of music, you might go to auditory remembered to hear what that music sounds like. On the other side, when people's eyes go to the auditory constructed side, that's when they're constructing new sounds in their mind that they've never heard before. So this is used a lot by musicians when they are composing music, and where you might be asking someone what their boss's voice sounded like if he or she spoke like Mickey Mouse. And then we have auditory digital. So when the eyes go down and in the direction of auditory digital, this is about our self-talk or the logical, rational thinking that we do. So when we're doing that and accessing that information, that's when our eyes go down in the direction of auditory digital. And then lastly, looking down the other way, we have kinesthetic. And that's when our eyes are accessing our feelings, either as emotions or as something that we feel, like the touch of something, or physical sensations that we are feeling in our body. So these eye accessing cues give us an indication of how someone is processing the information that they're giving us. Now, there are some people who are what we call reversed organised, and they're a very small proportion of the population. And when they're found, they tend to be people who were born right-handed and forced to become left-handed. And you'll find that their eyes move in the reverse way. And the way to spot this is to ask questions where do you expect their eyes perhaps to go to visual remembered, and notice what happens. And notice if their eyes go in the opposite directions. So you'd want to ask more than one question to make absolutely sure that they are reverse organised or not. And here is the exercise for you to do to start to use eye accessing cues and learning them. First of all, find someone to work with and ask them a couple of questions from each of the sections of the list of questions that's on the next slide. And make sure that you're watching the eyes as you're asking the questions. So if you've got the questions written down, read the questions first and then look up and ask them, so that you can really pay attention to what's happening to their eyes. Because sometimes the eyes move very, very quickly indeed. And if you're reading something at the time, you'll miss what's happening. Now, in this exercise, if you notice that the eyes don't go where you expect, just ask the person what was happening to them. For example, you may ask, what would an elephant look like with polka dots all over it? And you notice that the person you're asking, that their eyes first go to visual remembered and then to visual construct. And when you ask them what's going on, it could be that they went to visual remembered to see the picture of what the elephant looked like first, and then they went to visual construct to put the polka dots on it. Here are the questions for you to ask. And please use other questions as well that you think are appropriate, but these are just guideline questions. For visual remembered, you might want to ask perhaps, what colour is your front door? Or what colour is your first car? Or what was the brightest colour clothing you wore recently? For visual construct, you might want to ask, what would an orange square with purple stripes look like? Or what colour hair will you have in 20 years from now? Or what would an elephant with pink polka dots look like? For auditory remembered, you could ask, what does a dog barking sound like? Or listen to your favourite song in your mind. Or tune into the sound of the ocean. With auditory construct, you could ask them, what would it sound like if I was speaking underwater? Or what would it sound like if a lion yodeled? Or what would a whistle sound like in space? Auditory digital, you could ask them to say the first lines of the national anthem to themselves, or to recite a nursery rhyme, or to ask them what do they say to themselves to psych themselves up. And lastly, for kinesthetic, you could ask them, what is eating a lemon like? What does it feel like to float in the water? How does it feel to put your hand in a bucket of very cold water? Now, when you're doing these exercises, you just want to ask them the questions. You don't need for them to answer them, but just to think of the answer and for you to notice what happens with their eyes. So, how did you find doing that exercise? Noticing eyes accessing cues takes a little practice, and a great place to do this is any time when you're talking to someone, or to watch quiz shows or interviews on television. As a coach, it's really useful to be able to do this easily, and the more that you coach, the quicker you'll get at it. In later sessions, you'll discover even more ways of using this information in your coaching. So when you're coaching, your ability to notice more and more about the person you are coaching helps you change what you're doing to help them better, and gives you valuable information that you can use to bring about changes more easily and quickly.